I run a show called the Agentic Enterprise. So I'm from a camp that believes that Agentic AI is no longer just an experiment in the lab. It is moving into production. I talk to so many folks, so many organizations who are deploying it in production. We ourselves heavily use it. We have our whole MCP servers and we are doing incredible work with it. Now, SOUTHWORKS, a company, they did a research where they surveyed more than 625 cloud architects and decision makers, and findings are pretty clear. Nearly everyone sees value in AI reasoning, decision optimization, and autonomous agents. But here is the challenge: most organizations don't have the internal capacity to scale these initiatives on their own. So, how are enterprises actually executing on agentic AI today, and what's holding them back from doing it at a scale? That's exactly what we are going to find out in this episode of the Agentic Enterprise with Johnny Halife, CTO at SouthWorks. Johnny, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's my pleasure. This is the first time I'm talking to you or to someone from SouthWorks. While we'll talk about the survey report, but before that, let's just quickly talk about SouthWorks. Talk a bit of the company, the space that you folks operate in, and the problem that you're solving for modern enterprises.
SouthWorks has been around 21 years. We started working before the cloud, before everything else. And throughout our journey, we went from helping hyperscalers, that's how the company started, working with Microsoft and the AWS of this world, up to helping them, their customers, right? To modernize their enterprise technologies, move from on-prem to cloud, from cloud to cloud, go to the cloud native stack, cross clouds, and get to that point of resiliency uh, in a piece of hardware they don't own anymore. From there, and over the last 3 to 5 years, we've been working on the AI space. I think that everybody started paying attention when ChatGPT exploded. But before that, we were already playing with the models, trying to figure out what to do. And over the last couple of years, we have been helping companies uh, surf this wave of AI and everything that entails.
Thank you so much for sharing that journey. You folks recently came out with the research around agentic AI, the stage from experimentation to active execution. First of all, talk a bit about the idea behind this research, or is it the first time you folks did, or you have been doing every year? Just let's start with the basics of this research first.
We help a lot of companies, all shapes and sizes, different geos and different industries. But we were always with this question of like, are these companies with a specific problem that come to us, or is this something that is happening on the market? So we decided to go ahead and partner with the Cube to go do this research across 600 plus architects and figure out what's the state of the cloud, what's the state of AI, and what are they looking forward on doing, and how they are planning on delivering on that roadmap. And this is how this research came to be. It's based, and this is the interesting part. um, all the questions and all the Q&A that shape the actual report are based on the onboarding questionnaire we run with our customers. So every time somebody comes along and say like, hey, we want to modernize our stack, or we want to move from cloud A to cloud B, or we want to go cross cloud, we share with them a questionnaire. So when I was talking with one of the analysts and researchers, we thought about like, hey, how about we run this in a wider market with everybody, those who don't know us, that might not have come to us for help, and understand the overall state of the market. So that is how it came to be. And of course, agentic AI, the adoption, sourcing, and scaling those endeavors was front and center because it's everywhere.
Excellent. Thank you. Now let's talk about some of the findings. In general, we do understand that a lot of companies, not a lot, almost every company is excited about AI. They want proof of concepts, but most of them don't materialize into production. But when we look at some of your reports, you show that a lot of experimentation is moving to active execution. So talk a bit about the reality, the contrast. Does it depend on industry to industry? Some industries are very mature. They have been, I mean, if you look at your camera, I mean, you cannot see it here, but it has machine learning. It's like almost 12-year-old camera, but it tracks my face. AI has been around for a very, very long time. OpenAI kind of rekindled interest in AI. So there are two different things that we hear, that proof of concept or failing, but your report is saying that from experimentation to active execution is helping. So I want to understand, based on your survey, and then you also said that the question you asked were not aimed at survey itself, it's the question that actually customers ask or partners ask. So talk a bit about, based on your experience, what is driving this shift and what does execution actually look like inside today's enterprise? Because execution could mean a lot of things. It could be just, hey, we are experimenting with it, versus this is something that actually end customers are using right now.
It's a great question, and I think that we live in a really messy space right now, because from what we saw, you can look at it from three different angles. The first one, it's a great push for automation that it's not necessarily tied to AI. So that's something that we saw. As you said, OpenAI and ChatGPT rekindled that love for automation and machine learning and those sort of things, but not all of it is, LLM based or generative or anything like that. It's just a matter of saying like, hey, everybody's trying to automate everything. How can we go ahead and do it ourselves? And when you look behind the scenes, it's a bunch of APIs and orchestration. So that's something that requires a lot of, I would say, coaching to our customers, saying like, hey, this might not be the right case for an agentic AI. It's more like an automation thing, but it's good that you're embarking on that journey. The other thing, and that's where most people say they are adopting AI, it's with the personal productivity improvement kind of thing. Think of it as either GitHub Copilot if you're a developer, or the M365 Copilot, or cloud work, or those sort of things that aid on the personal usage of your computer and save time on tasks. And then there is a real implementation of agentic autonomous AI in which you have uh, data that it's being, inference upon or reason upon, if you are not that technical, trying to, unlock new insights, figure out new ways of doing things, and kind of, running under the human supervision, but with more autonomy. I think within those three buckets, it's all different. And I think that some standardization would need to happen, because the ones that don't need AI at all, right? Like those integrations for automation. If you end up going down that path and you say like, yeah, sure, we'll go use OpenAI agents in Claude and create an MCP server and all those things, it might result in like too expensive to run, and people will kill it, won't take it into production because it's like, yeah, that's not $1 million problem. The personal productivity is great, but it comes with a lot of governance challenges, right? Like, who's paying for that ChatGPT or that Copilot? Is it you? Is it a corporate? It's like, are you running on free trial? Your are you training public commercially available models with PII, with information that should never leave your enterprise, and those sort of things? So that's one of the places in which we help customers move forward and try to standardize that productivity side of it. And then it's the implementation, the real agentic workflows that uh, go with a mandate and start asking for permissions, and you treat them as users, and you generate identities, and you try to figure out what's this new world of having autonomous pieces of software that are running, that need to access your data. How clean is that data? How secure? Like, how do you put guardrails on that? And I think that, that's kind of the number one roadblock when you think about it, whether it's on the personal productivity or the full agentic, autonomous thing, open cloud or cloud. Like, it might have different names by the time we release this. But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, how secure are we? Which information is leaving our premises? If and how? Who's going to control that? Who's going to own that information? Are we putting the proper roadblocks in place? When we give agents autonomy to go do things, what are the contention nets? Who is overseeing that behavior? And that is kind of the most exciting thing of it, that it's like, you know, it's almost sentient kind of thing versus the this is scary. Like, you know, it can go send emails and do stuff. So figuring out the proper governance, the proper, kind of calibrating your risk appetite when it comes to like, okay, this is how far I think we should go at this point, and having that framework. But when I say framework, people think about, the .NET framework or the traditional framework in the code sense. This is more like a set of practices and processes in place for governance and for maintenance that you can, you know, use to keep control and keep tabs on your agents and such. It's kind of the next frontier for all this to start scaling, because the individual user is super excited. We all go on X and read all the amazing things that these agents are doing, or the agentic frameworks are doing, and so on and so forth. But everybody's scared. Like, what if it starts getting into the super confidential or the PII or the things that will get us in trouble? So from what we've learned in our report and the survey and everything, that's the number one roadblock, right? Like, from having an enterprise gateway to accessing the models, to running small self-hosted models, to dealing with PII, who owns the data, what goes where. Those are the questions that remain unasked, because these endeavors tend to be individual. People get really, really excited. They go online, they go into, Anthropic, Perplexity, ChatGPT, Grok, and they throw a document. And it's like, yeah, what happens with that? Like, where is that document going? Who's going to own once that, it's past your desktop and it's uploaded into the internet? Do we have any problems? Will we have any potential privacy problems? And those are the roadblocks. That's the number one thing when it comes to streamlining those pilots into actual production environments. The other thing is cost, whether it's related to specific user licensing cost. And we have run a lot of projects on change management for developers and stuff like that to figure out if it makes sense with the current state of their organization, whether they are using these copilots, how they are using it, if there is anything we can do to help them use, because they have a price tag on it. And the last thing, it's like, is your use case the best use case for an LLM or for a copilot? Like, and we've seen many of these in which, because there is no enterprise access layer, there is no mandate to go, organize this data and put these frameworks in place. We don't have the proper services. So what people end up doing is sharing reports, and you use a lot of tokens in computer vision to try to turn back into database format something that was already there before it turned into a report. And that might end up using a lot of tokens. So all that, intent, the individual intent from the information workers and the developers and everybody that is in the front line working with these models needs to bubble up to the management. And we need to have the proper frameworks for governance, risk, and so on in place in order for this to turn into a real thing. Otherwise, it's, the wild, wild west.
Your findings also suggest that most enterprises don't have internal capacity to build agentic AI solutions in house. How do you see the balance between platform vendors, consulting services, internal teams evolving over the next few years? Because this is becoming an ecosystem, not one company dominate the whole market.
It's a great point, because as with every technology, and we've been around enough to have seen this before with the cloud, right? When you have like a lot of sysadmins dealing with your current infrastructure, and when you ask about the cloud, they will be like, we have no time, we have no skill set, we need to learn this, but the transformation needs to happen way faster than that. So we are at the same point, and and I think it's a combination of everything because the platform vendors have a unique advantage of being able to prepare these agents or prepare these APIs or MCP servers or anything that it's ancillary to this ecosystem from the inside out. And that's a unique advantage because you can shape it to your own taste. And that's fantastic. But then is the reality. And the reality happens when you ask the right questions, like, do we really need this process? How will this process evolve if there is a human in the loop instead of a human actor taking care of the things? And you need to rethink a lot of things. And that's where, the consulting or the IT services companies comes into play to ask the right question, to rethink the process because, it's really hard to stop the machine when you're running. And this requires some, taking two, three steps back and looking at the whole thing to make sure that you are not trying to optimize something that doesn't even need to exist. So it's a combination of both. I think that with the evolution of and we've been there early in the game of the, agent to agent protocols and those sort of things. That's the other frontier that it's like, you can either build your own agent that does anything that will be too complex to maintain as any other piece of software. So why don't you bring the best from the platform vendors and combine it with your own unique advantage that it's your data, your access, your systems, and your specific domain knowledge of your industry and make them talk and make them collaborate and put the proper guardrails in place and tap, into the best of breed for everything. And that's a challenge that most companies running their day-to-day operations are unable to do without, figuring out how not to stop everything. So that's a unique opportunity. Most of the respondents to our survey say that they will rely on IT and consulting firms to implement these workflows. Uh, but also most of them are planning on sourcing these agentic capabilities from the platform vendors. So you see there is a white space there because if they are going after both, somebody needs to stitch them together. And I think this is the opportunity that we are after.
Can you also talk about whether organizations are looking at long term deployments where they're planning for future or they're right now near term practical AI applications where they can start seeing ROI tomorrow versus, hey, we'll invest, we'll see what things look like 5 years from now. And also, are there any use cases that are delivering the fastest time to value? And if you can give some examples, that would be great too. So that two questions mixed together.
Definitely. So this is a great moment because AI, when ChatGPT came along, everybody was AI is going to eat the world. Then, and we hear this over again with every, report and tweet and everything that it's around that it's like we are living an AI bubble. So the use cases kind of swing between like, hey, we want to build the future 10 years from now, but we need proof today. So there are specific use cases, whether it's on automation or troubleshooting or assisting with decision making and finding insights and stuff like that that are midterm to short term where you can prove that value. And it's kind of it's an agile approach that organizations are taking, like prove that it can do the most basic stuff and then layering complexity as bricks one on top of the other. There are in the IT space, we've seen amazing results with troubleshooting. So think of it as you are running a live software that it's accessed by millions of users, and you have a production incident. You have access to the logs. You have access to a source code. So why don't you connect an agent that can help you troubleshoot and maybe suggest a fix for them? Something that would have taken 6 hours now takes 15 minutes. That's impact because that reduces the number of people you have to have on call, that changes your escalation process, that puts the human in the loop. Like this is not deferring everything and later on blaming the AI. It's, instead of having a human go through all the data and trying to figure out what just happened, getting like a root cause analysis because you can get the logs and you can look at the source code and say like, hey, here is an issue. This might be the fix. That's, that's where the money is right now. That's a use case in which we are bringing efficiency to the human. We are putting the human in the loop and we are delivering real business value to the organizations because we went from 3 to 5 hours downtime to 30 minutes because we get the fix and we roll it out. We have the human reviewing the change and saying like, yeah, that's it. Or maybe tweaking something. So that's really one place in which AI is shining. It's making sense out of data, going through a lot of data in a short amount of time and suggesting what's the next best step. I think that summarizes where enterprises get more excited about it and are willing to invest the most. It's when you get to those use cases in which you say, hey, I put this out and here is my ROI. I think that this is not a bubble. We might be living in a bubble-ish moment where we see crazy valuations and a lot of commentary around it. But this is an actual change. This is going to change the way we work, we interact with computers, and the efficiency that our business processes have. So I think that the way in which we build that trust and build that confidence is by finding these quick wins and stacking one on top of the other and rethinking those things. And we are at that moment. And I think that what we found is that enterprises need to, show don't tell moment that it's kind of our DNA of saying, hey, you know what? This sounds fantastic. Show me the value, show me the money. And I think those use cases where AI shines is what gives them courage to start rethinking business processes and workflows and automation and real autonomous agentic scenarios, if you will. But you need to start somewhere.
A lot of organizations, they are using different tools, different models. Can you talk about how do you see standardization, interoperability, and scalability so that organizations are not, as we have seen in past, reinventing the wheel? The So the main foundation, just like Linux kernel or Kubernetes, is there, but they build on top of that. They add value on top of that. What are you seeing there?
I would see that uh, the agentic AI foundation and those things couldn't come at a better time because enterprise readiness is super fragmented. The examples that you gave are right on spot because Kubernetes kind of set up the operating system for microservices and production ready. And Linux is the core. Like even the Microsoft Azure and so on and so forth, um, workloads are running on that. So I think it won't take 20 years as it was before, but something needs to change. And we are living that time because today everything is super fragmented. Most of deployments on the enterprise are limited to either individual departments or individual workers, which are using publicly available tools that the cost of replacement is really, really hard. They are not thought as a system, they are thought as a tool, but a tool without the replacement or don't know the interface or you know, this is a job that it's doing, and eventually, if we need to swap it out, this is how we do it. We are not thinking in those terms. It's super spread across organizations without standardization. Uh, that fragmentations, that fragmentation creates challenge for either scaling, consistency, usage, monitoring, and eventually, better negotiation with these vendors. Because when you want to consolidate, you need to be prepared, and that's where the frameworks and the practices come into play. Also, the integration side, right? Like we on the cloud native foundation technologies, we talk about Kubernetes as a gold standard, and we figure out, monitoring and all that based on that assumption. Then whether you run SUSE or Canonical or Red Hat or whatever your container is using, and it's using Java or .NET or whatever, we have some level of standardization from the outside, and we can treat those blocks as building blocks that we can replace. I think that that's the next frontier that would drive the standardization. It won't diminish the value of the platform vendors because They have their unique secret sauce that are the models and the integrations and everything that they are working on. But as an enterprise, you need that Kubernetes moment. You need that Linux kernel moment. You need that, uh, well, these are the things that we won't be arguing about. We just, change the underlying implementation to better fit our business, to better fit our purpose, or because that specific platform vendor excels at X capability or skill. Um, that's not the reality today. That's definitely not where we are at, but that's where should we should be going. And I think that's exciting too because with A2A and everything that Google had done on that front, we started to see the light, right? Like we, for a long, long time, all these AI machine learning spaces were clustered and controlled within these platform vendors, and everybody was so secretive and not talking what they were sharing. Now we, you know, as a community or as an industry, are talking about like, hey, we need to play better with each other. We need to understand the landscape, and if enterprises are really going to adopt all these, we need to get to that point. We need to get to that Kubernetes state in which we all trust Kubernetes. It's fantastic. There are many flavors to it. There are many vendors that provide it, but the basics and the fundamentals are there. And I hope that we reach that in the short term and it doesn't take us another 10 years to standardize.
As these systems are getting deeper and deeper into organizations' infrastructure, their systems are becoming more and more autonomous. Governance is also going to become a very important topic there. Also, this is global. Different countries, they have their own privacy. Europe is all about GDPR. Asia, then of course North America, different countries. How mature is AI adoption governance?
So the tools are there. I don't think that the current implementation state with this fragmentation and this per business unit or per individual sort of things are driving those. There are a lot of things to control, and there are a lot of design patterns that we can learn from the past. The least privilege model to have the service principal ask for permissions when you need those, the data residency requirements, and all those things still apply. But as it happened with the cloud, and is it had happened before with you know uh, data processing pipelines and training machine learning models, uh, you need a company-wide policy and commitment to standardize this because a single individual user or a business unit, it's not up to a point of thinking like, hey, where is this data processed? Or are we taking data across the border? Like we all know that people are doing that, but it's really hard for the current state to be standardized at the level that we need. I think it's a challenge. I think that there are a lot of tools that the AI safety or AI has been born with the safety in mind because we are all scared of what it can do. So there are a lot of tools and mechanisms in place, but there are a lot of patterns that we should, try not to reinvent the wheel and figure out how we translate those into the AI world. Call it the least privileged access or the need to know as if it was an employee, or even the data residency as it happens between Europe, the US, Asia. But that requires a higher level commitment at an enterprise level and some sort of standardization because otherwise it's really hard to manage. Um, Tools are there, mechanisms are there, patterns have been around for a long time. It just takes the enterprise to commit to it and start deploying these and put it, as you said, right? The guardrails that are not the blockers because we don't want to deter innovation. We want to foster it. And I think that those guardrails will make sure that we do it in the least dangerous way or the most optimistic way we can.
As we discussed, almost every company wants to embrace it. They are doing proof of concept. which mostly are failing in production. You folks have been around for a long time. You have seen the industry's failures, you have seen the mistakes, and then how those mistakes were correct. You were not born 3 years ago in the era of AI. You have seen much bigger world. So based on those lessons, whether it was Docker, whether it was Kubernetes, or a lot of other technology that came and went, where a lot of we have seen folks, they get excited, they invest heavily, then they realize that ROI is not there, then they start course correcting. They will hire and then they will fire, they will embrace and then they will ditch. We have learned we don't have to keep reinventing the wheel. So if I ask you, what is your advice based on your experience, this survey, where they should their proof of concept are more successful and they reach production, what is the first step they should take, and what is also a step they should not take if they really want to become successful when it comes to agentic AI or AI in general?
That's a great question, and it's something that I play by heart. It's when you look at these problems and when you look at the technology as the solution, try not to fit your problem into the solution. Let's figure out what your problem is, what your current solution, and what needs to transpire into the next generation. We've seen this before with people saying like, I own 150,000 blades on my own data center. So I will go ahead and get 150,000 VMs, and probably you will be out of business in 3 months because the TCO and the ROI for one technology is not the same as the other. With AI is the same thing. There are a lot of things into these business workflows that are inherent to us human beings and the way we communicate, the way we reason on top of the information we have, and the different mediums and formats we use to share information. With AI is the same thing. If you want to succeed, you need to design for the AI era, whether it's through MCP, APIs, using vectors, and those things. It's not about replacing a human, saying like, hey, this is what I do, just do the same thing, because it will fail, because the ROI won't be there. It will be too expensive to run. And you cannot translate linearly. This is exponential technology, as it has been with the cloud. Before the cloud, we used to buy capacity just in case. With AI, people are trying to automate or carbon copy workflows as they are today. They will eventually become too expensive to maintain, and you won't see the ROI. And as you described, the firing and hiring and firing and hiring for a couple of years will start to happen until we settle. So my advice is always like, when you have an agentic problem in front of you, ask yourself, is this the best solution, or is this what we know? Like, you need to rethink processes, you need to rethink workflows for this new era, and trying to understand the compute power of the AI models and so on, and its limitations, because there is no such thing as a do it all. You need to put the human in the loop in the right place at the right moment, but do not replace the whole workflow as a carbon copy of, like, hey, I had a guy doing this, now I have an agent doing that, because eventually it will become just too expensive to maintain and you won't see the ROI. That's why most of these proof of concept fails, because they try to automate what they know, and what they know, it's going to change, because this is exponential technology that will revolutionize the way we work. And it's a fantastic time to be alive.
Johnny, thank you for joining and sharing these insights on how agentic AI is moving from the lab into real enterprise deployment and what it takes to scale this system effectively, what mistakes organizations make, what are the right steps they should take, and how you presented a positive picture of how enterprises are actually leveraging AI, generative AI, agentic AI to further automate their systems. Thank you so much for your time today, and I look forward to our next conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. I had a great time. I'm looking forward to do this again soon.
And for those watching, if you are facing similar challenges scaling or adopting agentic AI, if you have any doubts that this is a bubble which will burst and your investment will go to waste, don't listen to critics. Listen to interviews like ours. And don't forget to also check out SOUTHWORKS, their latest reports, and Also, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and share it with your team so we can bring more discussion like these to you. Thanks for watching.